I'm Kim Marie, co-founder of the Parzival Academy, and I'm here with one of our contributors, Tad Hargrave. He is the founder, owner, master of marketing at marketingforhippies.com, and he has agreed to be a contributor to Parzival Academy, helping us to work with young adults looking to expand who they are in the world and how they show up in the world, and then really how to put themselves out there. And Tad is so great at so many ways of connecting with people, building community, and has done a lot of different things. And I thought we would have this lovely conversation to share a bit more about him and his own experience moving through life and finding himself. So welcome, Tad. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure to be here.
I want to ask first, what do you wish you knew at the age of 18?
Oh man, isn't this the big question? Do I wish I knew at 18? Well, I'm not convinced that knowing things abstractly helps. I remember I got to hang out with this Hawaiian kahuna. His name was Hale Makua. And it was such a strange thing. I was, younger at the time, which I suppose is all that I've ever been. But some of my friends were going to meet my friend Puma Kispe Singona, who was a young medicine man at the time from Peru, and he was doing a workshop on this, I think the Mesa bundle practice, and so a number of us knew him from different things, and we were going to meet him in Nelson and drive to Vancouver. And somehow we had this outrageous good fortune that this fellow Hale Makua decided to fly up and join us for this road trip. And he'd said, yeah, I could have gone to this. There was this gathering of sort of elders or something from around the world. It was some big, important, impressive gathering. He said, I chose not to. I had to be here. And I remember he talked about how different qualities had positive and negative polarities, or sort of. He said, the negative polarity of knowledge is not ignorance. It's theory. It's the abstract. It's ideas. And so it's fine. This is a question I ask my clients too, but just, I suppose, to frame it with, there's just a limited utility to somebody giving you advice.
Yeah.
And, if I could go back in time and give myself advice, like most of us, it wouldn't have had much of an impact. I think what most of us need is maybe to know things, but those knowings come in more nutrient dense forms. I suppose it's not too dissimilar to you get synthetic vitamin C, or you get vitamin C from sauerkraut or fruit or something, and you get a vitamin from a pill. It's different than the vitamin in the context of all the other things. And so this is why I think traditional cultures, there's so much emphasis on role modeling, storytelling, helping people come to these things themselves instead of imposing them on people or telling people. I don't think most traditional cultures put much stock in giving advice to people. I think that most traditional cultures have, in fact, a lot of proverbs pointing out how useless advice ends up being. But what can be very useful is a culture to grow up in. I mean, if I'd had elders around me and a real culture to be in, and the fabric, I might have come to know a lot of things without ever being told those things. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wish I'd had when I was younger. And maybe it's selfish of me to wish it, because maybe not having it has put me in a position to do something about it for the ones to come. But I'll still be selfish and still wish that I had it. And I imagine one of the things I would have come to was a certain, I don't know if I can sum it up, but I think that the consequence of it probably would have been that I wouldn't have been so uptight. I was so type A when I was younger. My brother was probably the bad kid and I was the good kid. he had a more volatile nature, and so I just in reaction I think had a more passive nature, or maybe his volatility was in reaction to me, and who knows how these things go. But and so there was this, the being the nice guy, which tied into a kind of puritanism. So I did this raw vegan thing. I did I became Christian after watching Billy Graham on TV um, for like a year, which was the most uptight, judgmental year of my life. And there was just a real draw to some kind of puritanism instead of wholeness. And I suspect if I'd grown up in a culture, I would have had more of that sense of wholeness instead of the obsession with purity, which is the reaction to not being on the receiving end of some kind of wholeness. And
Mm.
um, I suspect I would have come to some sort of, it would have been as if, I mean, if I'd been plunked in that kind of a culture, I think the whole thing would have been whispering to me, just relax. It's okay. Take it easy. Because I was so wound up. I just worked so hard all the time and I never gave myself a break. It's like you can rest, you can relax, would have been something good to know in my bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I'm just in awe because it speaks to me as well. For what it's worth, in working with you, your energy brings that calm to me.
Oh,
And I
good.
feel that, which is such a lovely gift. And as you said, seeing that early on, maybe that's exactly what allows you to do what you do and bring the magic that you bring. Because
Mm.
yeah, we could wish it for ourselves. I know you went to a Waldorf school. I put my kids in a Waldorf school, and I've wished it for myself as well. But had I been there, I might not have sent my kids there. So who knows? I don't know. you know.
It's yeah, it'd be my wish for all of us is that we'd end up being more comfortable in our own skin. I don't know what it is we know or that you could be told that would have you be more comfortable in your skin, but it's people tend to think they want to be more confident, and that's what they need. But I think what most people need is just to be more comfortable in their own skin. There's that Chinese proverb that says, um, stress is who you think you should be,
Mm,
and relaxation is who you are.
mm, wow. I love
Yeah.
that. Yes, being comfortable in our skin for sure. Super powerful aspiration, you could say. And
Yeah.
looking at Parzival Academy and what we're trying to do with our work. I mean, of course, the story of Parzival itself is this journey of a young boy, naive and foolish, and even a bit tricked by his own mother, who doesn't want him to leave. Moving out into the world
Mm.
to she wants to do things to try to keep him and keep him safe and protected. And of course, any of us as parents, we want to do that for our kids too. It's so natural, and yet we can't protect them or ourselves from the world. And this is such a potent aspect of the story, is how do we let go of the reins as parents, but how do we as young people allow ourselves to be comfortable in our skin as we keep experimenting, trying new things, moving into the world, um, testing the waters, whatever you want to call it, and allowing ourselves to make the mistakes, go through the trials, meet up with the mentors, the classic hero's journey. And I love what you said also about less about advice and more about the direct experience of it, because isn't that the way of the story? He learns by direct experience, and sure, he has some mentors, but also those mentors tend to help him to live in the questions. So
Well, and I would say this, that comfort in your own skin is fundamentally not a self-generated anything.
mm,
You don't generate your own comfort in your own skin. It comes from you being on the receiving end of other people being comfortable with your skin. It's, well, I should just say others. And that could be an experience with the divine. That could be an experience with nature, with animals. Some of us get lucky and we're on the receiving end of somebody who looks at us and just like, you'll do, you're all right. And where we don't have to prove ourselves. But I mean, my commiseration with young people, and certainly I remember when I was younger, I mean, be comfortable in your own skin. In this society,
yeah,
are you mad?
yeah,
The constant wash of social media, the comparisons to other people, the bullying, um, it's very difficult to figure it out. And then, of course, um, the world is suddenly awash in so many different opinions about what life is and what it means to be human, and what does it mean to have the skin color we have or the sexual orientation we have, and to have the experiences we have. And so it's hard to find any ground in that. Maybe one of the most trustworthy things about our times is that we've lost any sense of who or what to trust,
Mm, yeah.
and that's a trauma at a cultural level. That's a deep trauma to not be able to just rest. And so, how are you going to relax and be comfortable in your own skin when you're not comfortable with the skin of the world itself? And you don't know if you can trust that, and who to trust, and which adults to trust. And then you get into one social movement and you trust that, but then you hear an argument from another social movement and you start to realize it's um, it's very confusing.
Yeah.
So it's my commiseration to young people. What I would wish for you all as young people, our elders, you could trust time in nature. You can certainly trust that. And some missives that would find their way to you from the great beyond, if you can get them, because it's very the impulse to self-generate this stuff is an expression of the trauma that has us so uncomfortable in our own skin in the first place. Just at the nervous system level, we're designed to co-regulate, not self-regulate. Self-regulation is a kind of coping mechanism. It's in military hospitals, they call it triage, where they have to decide who to save. It's a very last ditch survival move, and it's not how we're designed to be. And yet, if you try to self-regulate and self-soothe and become comfortable in your own skin and be confident in yourself, it's not that the biggest trauma of our times, it's not that we don't believe in ourselves, it's that we have to, because nobody else does.
Yes.
And and so for young people who are struggling with this, I mean, mostly it's really commiseration because it's hard. But I would say the medicine is you find somebody younger than you and you believe in them.
Mm,
You find somebody younger than you and you be comfortable with their skin.
mhm.
And you affirm that their skin's just perfect the way it is.
Mhm.
That's the move. The move of trying to get affirmed by other people while completely understandable and proper, if you can get it, is the way. The move is, I think, to be, is Robert Bly said, if you haven't been fed, become bread.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And it seems to me, my experience as a parent, young people know how to do this inherently. They accept one another inherently unless they're taught otherwise. And obviously, our culture brings a lot of that teaching, even on the fringes, even if it's not directly in the household. But I've watched that concept with DEI and diversity, equity, inclusivity being such a big topic right now. Um, Schools are trying to bring the topic, and I definitely wrestle with this concept of bringing the topic. It's really about living it, living into this way of being. And I know my own sons, shared that for them, it's not about color blindness. We don't want that. We want to honor the differences in every human being and celebrate them. But there is an aspect of not necessarily bringing the quote unquote topic to point it out and make it something that it wasn't in the first place for some of the younger people that naturally, like you said, they just honor the skin of the other. They're comfortable with the skin of the other. And I've seen that happen even just peer to peer in the classes. And then certainly I love what you're saying about find someone younger and develop that even more.
Well, and I would just take it a step deeper too, to say, yeah, I mean, step one, can you honor the skin of the other? But then step two, can you honor the eyes
Mm,
of another?
mhm.
Because I do understand it's become more in fashion, and thank goodness, to be more mindful of demographics and the way those have unfairly given some people privilege and marginalized certain people. And they're just born with the skin you have, and all of a sudden, there you are, and born with the kind of proclivities and insides you have. And I mean, of course, there's sexual orientation, there's that, but there's also just you're shy, or you're confident, or you like attention, you don't like attention. There's a lot of things, and way you're more masculine, you're more feminine, whatever, and you get sometimes that's celebrated. Who you are is celebrated, and sometimes it's not. But I would just also make the plea that in this clamor for inclusion, that we don't shun people because they see things differently than us. It's like, we'll include anyone. Absolutely. We include everyone unless you voted for Trump.
Yep.
Unless you're right wing. Yeah. Unless you're a conservative. And that's just more division.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, which is very hard to do, to be willing to, can I faithfully inhabit the position of this person with whom I so deeply disagree? Not that so that you agree at the end, but could you then articulate their worldview in such a way that they would say, yes, you understand? There's the Okanagan in Canada, there's the Okanagan people, and they have this word inalkin. And inalkin, the image it brings to mind, or in the word, is like a drop of water on the head. So sort of a osmosis and absorption. And the idea was, at the very simple level, I would sit with you and you would sit with me, and I would say, I'd say, here's my opinion on this. Now, would you share your most opposite point of view? And now, as I'm listening, I'm seeking to understand, not to be understood. I'm trying to really hear this view that is so different than mine. And then the more formal version of it, as I understand it, is you would have the men, the women, the elders, the young people. And when there was an important issue in the community, the young people would speak to certain something, the men would speak to certain something, the women would speak to certain something, and then the elders would speak to something. Mm-hmm. And you would bring all these different perspectives, and then in consensus together, you would sit and try to come to some clarity. And it's at least worth trying. Yeah. It's not always, things aren't always reconcilable, that's true. But that, what I admire about that inclusivity is it's not just an inclusivity of demographics, because if we stay hinged on demographics the whole time, we become the perpetuation of the very thing we were struggling against. But also, can we be inclusive? Not all Black people see things the same way, for example. Not all Indigenous people have the same views on things. Not all people in the gay community are Democrat, for example. So this is an immense skill, I think, that is needed in these times that are increasingly polarized, is the willingness to be hospitable to views and perspectives that are different, and to really come from that place of, maybe you know something that I don't know. Maybe you have something you could share that, I had a conversation with a friend on, I won't go into it, but let's just say it's a topic that's very sensitive right now. And she said, no, I heard about that, and this was disproven. And I said, let's watch this documentary together. And we did. And at the end, I could tell she was rattled. She was a bit unsettled, but I admired her immensely for being willing to check out another point of view. Yeah. It's not that we're trying to see the truth, just trying to see more, I think.
That's a quote. That's a quote right there. Not trying to see the truth, but trying to see more. I think that so often, that intensity, or that longing to find the answer rather than living in the questions. Parzival is so much about the question. What is the question that we can ask? The asking the Grail King, what ails thee? This is what Parzival ultimately fails to do the first time, to ask, what is going on? How can I see from another perspective? How can I understand? I'd love to even hear your thought on the power of story for young adults.
Well, I'll just say this, just to go back to this. So in the story, Parzival, towards the end, he finally after 20 years of being yelled at for being a dumbass and completely fucking it up for the kingdom, he gets a second shot, which not everybody gets. And he's, standing in front of the Grail King, and he asks this Grail question. Of course, there's two different versions I've heard. One version is what ails thee, and the other is whom does the Grail serve? And so I said, one of the things that young people can do is you can find people younger than you and believe in them instead of trying to get believed in. But the other thing, if you're jonesing for elders, which if you're not, you should be. That took me a long time to realize that was what was missing in my life, was actual real life older people, particularly older men I was needing. I just didn't have them. They just weren't there. And I didn't imagine that as a young person I had any role in that. But that's, to me, one of the hearts of the Parzival story is, elders are not self-made. This is so important for young people to get. If you want elders in your life, they don't just happen on their own. You don't just get to a certain age and, I don't know, you wake up one day and say, oh, I'm an elder. You don't really get notified. There's no letter in the mail. There's no equivalent of Hogwarts for seniors, where you get the letter and now we'll come to elder school and we'll teach you. And so, and we don't just get to choose, it's kind of gauche to say, well, now I'm an elder and self-proclaimed, but also elders can't make each other. You can't just sit in a circle of older people and say, yeah, you're an elder and I think you're an elder and great, we're all elders together, but you're just going to be old together. Well, that's a retirement home. And one of the disgraces of our time, of course, is how old people are sequestered from younger people when it should be the opposite. But who makes elders? Primarily young people. And how do young people make elders is they ask the king a question that they deeply need to know the answer to. They ask somebody older something that really matters to them that they can't find the answer to themselves. And so with Parzival, both questions, what ails thee? It's the whole kingdom has gone to ruin because you're sick. What is wrong with you? I'm trying to make the connection. I'm trying to understand, because clearly there is one, and you've been sick a long time. I've gone 20 years. I come back, you're still ailing. What is wrong? And also immense care for this older man, but he's asking a question he cares about. And he's, or whom does the Grail serve? Boy, is there any bigger question in life? So he's asking big, meaningful questions. And this is what alerts an older person that maybe they might be an elder, is a younger person starting to say, maybe you have something to say to me. I'm really struggling in my life in this. I'm heartbroken. I thought this was going to be the one. And now, she broke up with me, or whatever it is. I mean, you'll know where your heart is troubled. But if you can, it is such a blessing to give that to somebody older than you. Somebody in their 60s, you sit down, your grandparents, and you say, I have something in my heart that is just burdening me, and could I share it with you? I went through this thing. I'm so devastated. And to find some question in it of, maybe it's, did you go through anything like this when you were younger? Is this familiar to you? And in asking that question, it's a kind of, it's like those old, the volcanoes you make in science fairs, the vinegar and the baking soda with the red dye and the foams over. It's literally that kind of chemical catalytic reaction that happens in an older person when a young person appears and asks. What I'm saying is, the eldership wasn't there before you showed up. They may have had no idea they had anything to offer. They may have been just as plagued by self-doubt as you, and yet the willingness to ask the question changes something in them, because they have to go. This king has to go and it really reflect on this and realizes he's needed. And you notice, I have to read the story again, but it seems to me the rest of the castle was fine for him just to be lying there wounded and not asking anything of the wound. they were fine to just party on his dime, and nobody saying, nobody going to him and asking him for anything, just trying to pamper him, take care of him, and make him cozy and comfortable, rather than saying, we need you to show up for service now, even though you're wounded. And in fact, because you're wounded, there may be something in that wound that is needed in these times. So go to older people. And by the way, if you want to in with older people, try asking them, are there any recipes you made when you were younger? Like foods that you really enjoyed that you could teach me how to make? It's a good in, because then you're making food together, and a lot of memories start to come up. And you can learn a lot from that too. Plus you get a good recipe at the end.
I love that. I love that. And I know that that's a piece of what you want to bring with Parzival. Do you have any other thoughts around, your interest in being a contributor to Parzival, and any thoughts you wish to share with people around, why you care about doing this with the youth? Just a final thought on that.
Sure. Young people are getting such a raw deal. I went to Waldorf, but still, it's there just wasn't I probably had closer to a village than a lot of people do get these days with the Waldorf community. There was at least some semblance of shared, view of the world. But it's young people get a really raw deal. It's a world full of what Caroline Casey talks about as toxic mimics, where she gives the examples that, if you're injected with a radioactive iodine tracer for a medical test, and you have enough iodine in your system, which most of us don't, your body just gets rid of the radioactive stuff, it shunts it. But if you don't have it, your body will absorb it, will accept it as a sort of toxic mimic of the real thing. And I would just say we are awash in toxic mimics. And young people need to stop accepting the toxic mimics. And older people need to stop dishing them out and stop accepting them themselves. We need to be going for the real thing. And, there's a lot of labor and work involved. I don't want to simplify it, but it's very hard if you grow up and instead of going out in the sun, you're taking synthetic vitamin D, instead of, a healthy sexuality, it's pornography. Right. If instead of real myths and folklore, you're getting Hollywood. These are impoverished versions of the real thing in my mind. And so I'm a fan of you. I'm a fan of the vision of this. Of course, I'm a fan of the story Parzival, and I'm a fan of anyone who's trying to do something about the times, because there's no fixing it. The fix is thoroughly in right now. There's no turning the ship around. In particular, it's the direction is set, and it's going to go where it goes. And if it turns, it'll be real slow. And I doubt this ship is going to turn until it hits something. But I just admire anyone who's trying, or anyone who's saying, you know what, let's get off this boat in our little tiny boat and try to find land ourselves and start something beautiful, because nobody on this boat seems to be listening. I admire that. I admire people who are in the room trying to convince the captain to, change gears. And I just see you're trying to do something about the times. You're trying to do something that young people so deeply deserve, to give them a chance to connect with each other. And that was, even though I was missing elders, one of the things I had, thank God, was I moved down to Santa Cruz. I made the reckless move at 18 years old to move from Edmonton, Alberta to Santa Cruz, California, work under the table for this nonprofit. And we did summer camps, youth environmental social justice summer camps all over North America. Completely mad decision to do, being illegal the whole time. And boy, that was a good time, and so I got to have a lot of peers anyways. And that was wonderful. So I'm glad that you're doing that, bringing them together, and bringing maybe some older people into to give a kind of support that, boy, yeah, was sorely lacking for me as I was growing up. And no fault of my family, or it's just that's how it is
Yeah, a
these
cultural
days.
challenge.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Thank you so much, Tad. This is fantastic. I love the wisdom that you're bringing, and the understanding that you're bringing, and the foundational experience that you're bringing that will inevitably benefit not only the students, but all of us working together to bring this program forth. So thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation.
yeah. Well, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, I hope people will check it out. If you've got, I mean, maybe because I'll be sharing this with my list, would you be willing to just even say a little bit about what the program is, who it's for, what the hopes and aspirations of it are?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we created the program largely on the idea that you've spoken to so much of it, this idea of being able to trust in yourself and in your place in the world. I mean, that's a huge piece of the foundation of it. And and you've spoken so beautifully to these ideas of being comfortable in our own skin, and who do we trust and what do we trust in today's world. And on the one hand, we can't necessarily develop it in ourselves, but our hope is to develop it in a community of people looking
Mm,
for alternatives, people looking for something different than the conventional model. We've known a lot of young people saying, I'm not sure college is the right path for me. I'm not sure these gap years filled with travel and, um, other internships or whatever is right for me either. I just don't even know who I am or what to trust or how to be in this world right now. And so this is largely created as an opportunity to take a pause rather than falling into these traps of shoulds, if you will, that so often plague our high school graduates and even college graduates, feeling that they need to dive into the world head first, and often looking around them, seeing an awful lot of adults. It's a staggering statistic. I think it's over 80% of people surveyed are not happy in their career, in their chosen path or vocation. And you just have to wonder what's going on if that's the case, that we're not feeling a sense of place, a sense of purpose, and those
mm.
connections. You've touched on so much: nature, story, archetype, the connection to community, culture, elders, and all of that. That is exactly what we've created this to begin to. I think it's more of a seed planting, really, is to
Yeah.
say, we have something, and we hope that you take this into the world and really remember it, think about it, open to it, allow it to germinate and blossom within you over the course of your life. Yeah.
But boy, I wish I'd had a program like this. I didn't go to university at all. I mean, right away after high school, because I wanted to change the world.
Yeah.
I remember teachers said, "What do you want to do after high school?" "I want to change the world."
Wow.
And I was just so passionate about making a difference. And I saw nothing in university at the time, anyways, that in any way just seemed like a waste of time. I ended up going back for Celtic studies later, and I was excited. I went to Gaelic College on the Isle of Skye, but I bet you if I'd seen a program like this, I would have been really excited if I'd known there was anything like this. But yeah, I sort of looked around. I didn't see much, and so I had to kind of figure it out myself, and it turned out pretty well. But boy, anyway, I just that struck the memory of, oh, I remember having zero interest in university myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
much to my teacher's disappointment.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I mean, I honor and completely respect your ability to see that at that age and to say, this isn't for me. And I know I fell into the trap of looking at it all
Hmm.
and feeling, the good girl, trying to conform, trying to do the right things, and being intense about it, and like, okay, if I'm going to be successful, I have to go to university, I have to do this. And then just constantly going, but why did I do that? What's this? Like, I'm not doing what I did before, that nothing I'm doing now has anything to do with the 2 bachelor's degrees I have, so it's a completely different approach to say, maybe there really is something to the adventure, to the journey, to the opportunity to explore. and say, yeah, do we really need some kind of formal structure to make it happen? Look at what you're doing. You're helping all kinds of people change the world now. It's amazing. So inspiring.
Yeah, boy, to all the young people, just, I mean, do what makes the best memories,
Oh,
because
beautiful.
that's what's left, but not just for you,
Mm, yeah.
not just your memories, other people's memories too. You could do a lot worse than that as a kind of a guide. If there's some outrageous trouble you're thinking about getting into, and you think, no, you just ask yourself, what would be the better memory? I
Mm,
do this or I don't. If there's some yeah, adventure, and you could go on it, what would be the best memory? Now, if the adventure isn't one you really want to go on, that'd be a shitty memory to go on an adventure you don't want to go on. But God, especially when you're young, um, yeah, it's a time to be a little reckless. It's a time to step outside of the bounds, so that you learn where they are. You make a mess and then you clean it up. That's being a young person, and you learn as much from the making a mess as you do from the cleaning it up in the end. So,
and I love the wisdom of what's going to make the best memory, because
mm,
and the messes don't have to be maybe quite so large or quite so
right.
harmful potentially. And you have a little bit of a, if that's the only guidance, what a beautiful thing to send young people out into the world with, is just make the best memories, because it's going to serve in everything that we do for all of us. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
All
Thank
right.
you so much,
I know
Ted.
there's more. Maybe we'll get to do a part two sometime. But thanks so much for inviting me on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. We're so grateful to have you. Take care.